It is XR at work. Who are you?
I'm Dane. Who are you?
I'm Scott. We are back. It's been a while, Dane, but it's good to be back broadcasting. So thanks everybody for joining in, for checking this out. Hey, so today we're just coming off the heels of one of the bigger shows, right? One of the bigger conferences, in-person conferences in XR, and that was AWE, the Augmented World Expo in Santa Clara a couple of weeks ago. Dane was fortunate enough to be able to be there. And so, Dane, it's you today, baby. How did it go? You've been to enough AWEs and in-person shows in XR. Tell us what you saw compared to previous years. What stood out? What did you take from this?
Yeah, so one thing I would say is I think this show this year, it felt bigger to me. And it was very cool. I will say, for anybody who's in the industry and wants to actually go and meet people in person, shows like AWE, AES, and others are awesome for that. So it was great for me to be able to go and meet people in person. We're all pushing towards the metaverse and everything else, but it's still nice to be able to shake somebody's hand and have a steak dinner or whatever, and just talk through vision for the space. So it was a great time from a meeting people in person perspective. Had some really great conversations with some of the vendors that we use, and made some new friends along the way. What I would say, there's some trends I think that I would say that I noticed this year that are kind of taking the forefront in this space, and one is avatars, actually. And
Okay.
Scott, we talked a lot about this in the past. I think avatars are going to be important from a society basis, but also from like a work perspective as well. I think one of the challenges with, like, for instance, meeting in a virtual meeting room, if you have a headset on or something like that, is it's not very viable. Like if somebody just has like the looks like a Wii,
It's distracting, yeah.
yeah, a Wii avatar, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of the stuff that's going on around, like, oh man, I'll put some comments below this video with some names of folks I talked to. But there was a tool where you stand kind of in the anatomical position and you spin around in a circle, and it creates an avatar for you, and it's pre-rigged and all that stuff. And so you guys may have seen some examples of this, during AWE, where people are posting videos of their avatar dancing around with Ori from the AWE team. And I thought that was really interesting because we're getting to a place where cameras can actually they can do a good enough job representing the real world, that you can actually create avatars just using an iPad or something like that are pre-rigged, and there's not all the work that goes into doing all that stuff anymore. So the avatar thing was really interesting to me. And I also wonder, like, what's the next iteration of the avatar stuff. Like you're not going to wear the same outfit to work as you would to like the Travis Scott concert in the metaverse kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so the ability to change and quickly create an avatar, I think, is super interesting. I was going to ask you, Scott, like, do you think having a good representation of how you look in the real world is more important, or do you think like avatars that you can customize and make whatever you want? So if you wanted to be a giraffe, you could be a giraffe. Like, which one do you think is more important?
I think avatars are important because we are self-conscious people, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many times have I looked just in the last 3 minutes at to my lighting and my glasses? People worry about this stuff, right? And I think people want to. Number one, people want to look better in the metaverse than they do in real life, perhaps,
yeah,
right?
It's unfortunate if I have the same background in the metaverse is.
Yeah, I hope I'm better looking in the metaverse than I am in real life, But I think people are vain. We want to look better, but I still go back to this thing where we just don't want to be so odd looking that it's distracting from the experience, right? And we don't want to be self-conscious about it. And so, somebody told me recently, a plant manager, one of our factories, said, "Hey, I'll start buying electric vehicles when they're not ugly anymore." And I thought about that. I was thinking about it. It's like, I'll do an avatar when it actually makes me better looking than I am in real life, you know? So
Yeah, well, I
I
think
think
that's
customization is important. You bring up a good point, Dane.
yeah. Well, I think it's interesting too. I think what you just said is important. It's like different scenarios call for different things. Like
Yeah.
so, an avatar again going to a Travis Scott concert or whatever the next metaverse concert is. It's additive to have a funky outfit or be able to customize yourself with whatever tattoos or whatever it
Yeah.
is that you want to customize yourself with. But in a business meeting, that same outfit and those same tattoos aren't additive to the ability to have that conversation. So I think it's interesting to watch the market figure out where particular types of avatars are additive. But it struck me how easy that was, right?
But
Like,
you brought this up about like I could have a giraffe head, you know?
yeah,
And I mean, we joke about this, right? But it's like sometimes I want to be anonymous. Sometimes I want a giraffe head because I don't want people to see what I really look like because I'm, 54 years old at a, you know, Travis Scott concert in the metaverse, and it's like, all right, let's say put the giraffe head on my avatar, so you can have
right.
some anonymity, right?
Quote Scott saying that. Say sometimes I just want a giraffe head. Scott Murky, circa 2022.
Yeah, June 2022, right?
That's right. No, I just thought that was interesting, and I think a key thing that we've seen in this industry that's been hard for a long time is like just the pure difficulty of getting an avatar created or whatever. Like it's
Yeah,
gonna have to be as easy as you set your phone up and you hit the button and then you go spin in front of it and it creates your avatar. It
it's still
has to,
tough. It's still too
yeah.
tough to do it for most people. Yeah,
Yeah, well, I mean, it has to be that easy to get adoption because, like, I remember, I was seeing these like super high-end avatars from a couple years ago, but it takes a full camera studio with like a camera dome, and you go in there, and there's like a timer. You're like something in the microwave you're spinning around, right? And
yeah,
it's taking photos of you. Like, it can't be that. And you might actually, have this differentiation between like cheap avatars and expensive avatars, or like the people who are really into it have like high quality, nice ones that they've done in a studio, and everybody else has these iPad based,
maybe.
avatars. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting. So that was one. Another interesting part about AWE for me was the amount of hardware that I saw. And I think this is a good
Hmm.
thing because, for a long time, and I think we can commiserate on this, Scott, for a long time, it was like, HoloLens and like Magic Leap and, a couple were like the only players, in the hardware space. And like, those are great headsets. Like, don't get me wrong, but I just want a little more like competition, right? I want new and fresh ideas and new sensors and ways that we can think about these things. And so it was really refreshing to see new hardware companies coming out thinking about how do we think about screens and environment tracking and all these different aspects of what goes into making a good headset. There's people that are tackling it, and I think that's great because competition breeds success
Sure.
within the space. And I think that's an overall bonus for all of us.
How
So
big of a presence and kind of stage presence and booth presence did Qualcomm have? Because they've got to be leading a lot of this, right?
yeah, no, Qualcomm, it's interesting too. There's new technologies. So this was really cool. Actually, was uh, one of the challenges we've faced. I think particularly in VR, just because it's been more focused on scale. There's more people that are using VR headsets than like than a HoloLens or something like that right now
Yeah.
because of Oculus. The ability to split processing between a phone and a device,
Yeah.
which is really, really interesting because the form factor can get smaller if you can use the phone in your pocket to process data and then, essentially stream it to a lower profile device. So that's some really exciting stuff, that's happening in the space too. And I actually think that's a foundation for a lot of this because if we can only move so far as a processor that's on a headset, the problem is headsets get fast, you have limited battery power, it gets hot, right? Nobody wants a a 100-degree headset on their face because the processor is getting hot. So being able to segment the processing and then stream it is a massive win, I think, for the entire industry. And I think we're seeing that a lot too. But it'll be interesting, how that gets integrated into the hardware space, like kind of back to the hardware piece of this. Because, like I also had the opportunity to test some headsets I hadn't tested before. So like New Eyes is a great example of, of a group that I was able to meet with and test. I was really impressed by the form factor, because most of the time you put on an AR headset and you feel like RoboCop,
Right.
like,
right.
It's a fashion statement, if you will. Yeah. And so New Eyes was really cool because, it's just a lightweight set of glasses, right? Like it's a pretty simple, solution. I'll say the challenge, I think, with the smaller form factors like that is that, like with New Eyes, you have to be tethered to your phone, for instance.
With the physical cable.
With a physical cable.
Okay.
So like if you could get to that form factor where you're doing the streaming, processing stuff, that'd be amazing, particularly for us in the industry, like an industrial setting, because you don't want people having to worry about, entanglement issues or, whatever, because there's a cord that, is hanging down their back. Right. But I was really, impressed with the hardware that I did see and, all the kind of diversity in the way that people are tackling things. And then the other thing I would say is the ecosystem of accessories to the XR, space. So like haptics is a great example of something that, originally there's like maybe one or two haptics, companies, and everybody has the way that they want to do it, whether it's like the pulley method where like you have like the string on your finger, and as you pull it, it contracts and it makes it harder for you to move, or whatever. But everybody started for the most part with like mechano or vibration feedback.
Mm-hmm.
So what was interesting this time though is that there was a company that created essentially a shirt where if you got shot or something, it would actually it would use electricity to make you feel like you got shot in like a first-person shooter. Now, I don't know how that translates to XR for us, right? Like being in a factory, but I'm interested in your perspective, Scott. Like, how do you think about haptics, in the industrial, space, and what would that form factor have to look like for you to get really excited about it?
Yeah, I mean, that's tough because I feel like with where we're at, like in my day job in manufacturing, putting XR in factories, most of it's AR on the factory floor. A subset of it is certainly VR in a training room or in a conference room. So haptics is not high up on my priority list, but it would have to absolutely be low profile, inexpensive, something I could control, I could scale, to be interested in it. I think I'm probably not. I don't know. I mean, I hate it because this is XR at work, and I put XR in factories myself. I know you do too, and I'm just not super ready to get into the haptics implementations. But I will tell you that if it's good for the industry, it's good for all of us, right? And I think we've seen this before, Dane. You and I have been around long enough to see that things start out sometimes in the consumer industry, on the consumer side of XR, and then they start coming over into enterprise. And I do think, well, as you look at advances with even avatars, with hardware and peripherals, screens, some of the camera technology, scanning, and like we're talking about with haptic feedback, all of it starts off expensive and clunky and awkward, but then it starts to do two things. It starts to get cheaper and lower profile, firstly, and then secondly, it starts to transfer over into the enterprise space. And so I think even with haptics, it's going to happen, right? I'm not going to say never. I'll never use haptics devices in VR training in our training rooms in our factories, but I think we have a ways to go. I mean, what do you think? I mean, is this something do you see value in haptics, haptic feedback, gloves, body stuff now in VR in your day job, as it were?
Yeah, well, so I think where haptics could be really valuable for us is in like very tacit jobs where you're like, there's a lot of uh, maybe sensory, so like
Mm.
for instance, like you can imagine in a situation where like somebody's working on a motor. I don't know if you've ever been like working on a car or something, and like you can't see what you're working on.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so like I always have to take my glove off because I can't feel what I'm supposed to be feeling
Yeah.
in order to do it.
Yeah.
So like in a situation like that, I think haptics makes a lot of sense. Right. But I mean, that's a very specific and kind of a niche
It's interesting though.
application
But
of,
you know what I was thinking about when you were saying that, Dane? I mean, now that I think about it, we do a lot of training of people how to do preventive maintenance procedures or operation of machines. And
Mhm.
we've got a lot of, we call them pinch points, right? Don't stick your hand in here. You're going to get it cut off. In the VR training, you could, if you have haptics devices, you could, of course, give them a shock or give them some pushback to let them know that, hey, this is, that's a dangerous area, because
Mhm.
that's something that's been missing from VR
Mhm.
thus far without haptics is, hey, you stick it in and then the screen, explodes with blood and game over. Now you can kind of warn them,
Mhm.
and you can kind of sensitize them to the danger zones, the pinch points, right?
Yeah.
So you got me thinking, man. Yeah, this is good. And this is, you're starting to see, you saw a lot of haptics peripherals in
Yeah.
at AWE.
Yeah. So, and I thought it was interesting, like not only the haptics peripherals, but there's also new ways of thinking about haptics. So, like, I thought it was interesting that, most of what I'd seen in the past had been, it squeezes you, it vibrates, it, does something kind of pressure related. But like the electrical input one, was interesting,
Hmm.
just because it's a new way, I feel like, to think about, haptics and it was shocking, no pun intended, right?
Unintended, yeah.
Yeah, pun intended. But I thought that was it was interesting, and it makes me excited because I think anytime you look at like a vertical and everybody's doing the same thing, like the winner is going to be whoever can optimize that process the best, right? I like that we're continuing to see new inputs into the haptic space because it means that we haven't like reached the end of the line as far as like what's
Oh no.
possible and
Yeah.
optimizing that. So I know like some of the other also use like pneumatics, so it blows up like little uh, I guess orifices or tubes
Hmm.
at your fingers and helps with some of that and blows it across your fingertips. So I mean, it's just cool to see how this space is evolving, and it makes me wonder what it's going to look like in 10 years, right? Like will this podcast go down in history, and haptics will be super super important to us at some point. We'll both look like we'll both look silly because we
Schmoes because we were kind of naysayers in the beginning, maybe. Yeah.
that's right. But I
Yeah.
mean, I do think so I think the example of using like having to feel something where you can't necessarily normally see it or something like that, like that's an awesome use case for haptics. I think there's some areas where like you have to use thick gloves, like if you're doing electrical or something like
Hmm.
that. And I think it's if we just put somebody in a VR headset and it's super easy to pick things up and do all that stuff, in those gloves, it's like that's not realistic. Like it's hard to pick up little
Right.
pieces
Right.
of whatever with a thick glove on. And so
Right.
like I think there's situations like that where you can get some value out of it.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah,
So I know last fall, right, when you and I were at AWE together, there was a lot of talk around the metaverse and NFTs and cryptocurrency. I mean, fast forwarding now, 8 months later, still a lot
where
of
we at?
that at AWE. What did things shift, or is it still a lot of the same stuff they're talking about? Because it sounds like there's kind of some, I'll call it better, more practical, more pragmatic things being talked about.
Yeah, well, so what I would say is, at the last AWE, we were kind of at this like we were high, in the cycle, if not like at the peak of the cycle for a lot of cryptos, and NFTs were having their mania, and everything was going crazy. And then fast forward to now, and the markets have come back down. The macro environment that we're in is unique, to say the least. And so it was cool for me to see, because it felt like there was more pragmatic talk about what is the metaverse. And it wasn't quite so like hyperbolic. Like everybody wasn't saying, 2 years from now, like, we're all going to be in the metaverse and whatever. Like we were actually having like pragmatic discussions about, what does it actually mean for an industrial business to be in the metaverse, and what's an industrial application of NFTs, and how do we actually make this thing work, as opposed to just like, the kind of craziness that was
free for all. Yeah.
So that was good. I think that's, and it happened. I mean, VR went through its kind of hyperbolic phase, and then it crashed down, and then Oculus came back out, and so we're kind of back on the rise, and everybody goes through, or everything goes through the hype cycle. But I just want to, it's interesting, and I think it's healthy for us, because the hype cycle brought a lot of people into the space, and the people that stick around and actually find out the solutions, like you almost have to have this progression of like, get a bunch of people excited, get smart people into a space, have it crash back down. The people that survive are the ones that, that kind of live to tell the tale, and that build the actual solutions that,
based on reality.
Yeah. So, but yeah, overall AWE was an awesome show. I had the opportunity to lead the enterprise track, and met some new friends.
Good.
And it was highly, I guess, would highly recommend it to anybody who's in this kind of XR space, interested in, meeting some folks. And, the biggest thing too is just being able to put everything on, like being able to try the new headsets that are coming out, and, talk to the people who are the technical folks, who are actually building this stuff, and get an understanding of like what's the display technology, because that's one thing that I thought was interesting too. Is I had never paid much attention to like so you have the hardware vendors who are trying to sell to people like us, and then you also have these like they're like the technical folks who are selling the like screens and stuff that like OEMs would use. And so I walked through a couple of those booths, and there's some really interesting, bigger field of view, less expensive, does well in direct sunlight. Some of these things that like we've complained about for a long time, are being addressed by new manufacturers who are making screens and displays and all kinds of stuff. So that was really interesting.
I love it. I love to see that the industry advancing. I love to see gaps getting filled in, smart people taking good ideas and improving on them. And we all win because of this, right? And we end up getting better solutions for our factories and oil and gas and automotive, and even the consumer side. We don't care about the consumer side, but we are still consumers. So we do care about them. So good show. You want to go back next year? Maybe I'll join you down there.
Yeah, for sure. No, I'll be back. It was a good show, a lot of great connections, and for everybody who's watching that I had the opportunity to meet in person, appreciate the time that you guys gave me, and we're looking forward to next year. It was a blast.
We're meeting a lot of people these days, man. I mean, there's a lot of cool people out there. We've got, I want to give a shout out to guys like Michael Kaldenbach, who's been a big fan of the show and a big fan of yours and of mine, and that I feel like when I do that, I should kind of turn and show a picture of the fan I have sitting here. I'm not going to do that again on this deal, but Michael's been a big fan. People are starting to kind of show up and show some support for the XR at Work podcast. I mean, who's killing it out there? Who are you seeing? Who do you want to give a shout out to today, Dane?
Yeah, well, so like I had the opportunity to meet Devin Bouchon and Dylan from the Squint team. Like, they were amazing. Great people. Talk to. I met some of the folks like Tom Simmons from Immerse, who's one of the vendors that we use for VR. The Mira team, that we use for the AR, headsets. Had the opportunity to meet with some of those folks. So just overall, yeah, really, really appreciate you guys and the support that you've given us along the way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you and I will be together. The XR at Work podcast will be live and in person at AES in October in San Diego. That's October 18th to the 20th, I believe, in San Diego. AES is the Augmented Enterprise Summit. Used to be called EWTS, but Jeff and Emily do a great job of putting on that show. I'm excited about that, not just because I'm excited to get out of the Berkey basement here, but I'm excited to be back at AES and to see some of these people that we've been seeing and to get to spend time together. So I'm hoping that if people are listening to this, they'll remember to come to AES in October and come on the show. We're going to be broadcasting live from AES, and that should be exciting.
Yep, I'm super excited for AES, and hopefully we're going to be streaming some stuff live. So hopefully we'll get some good videos of Scott and some headsets, and
there you go. Yeah, absolutely. Or maybe I'll be in my new giraffe head avatar. You never know, man.
Yeah,
you never know what you're going to get.
World.
Right, right. Well, hey, it's good talking to you again. Thanks for going to AWE and for bringing back the cliff notes there and the positive news that things are advancing. Wouldn't you say in the XR industry?
Yeah, for sure. No, it's an exciting space to be in, and it's good to talk to you too, Scott.
Terrific. We'll talk again soon, buddy. Thanks, everybody. Please hit the like and subscribe. Turn on that bell, right, so you can get notifications when we go live again, which we will try and do it again soon. Thanks.